Hello, and welcome to The Bridge, the monthly webinar series hosted by the Masters in Educational Technology program at Michigan State University. I'm Michelle Hagerman, and I'm joined here in the room by Rohit Mehta. We are your hosts today for what we anticipate will be a really engaging conversation on technology integration in arts education programs. If you're watching the webinar live at bridge.educ.msu.edu, we encourage you to contribute questions, thoughts, comments to the embedded Etherpad on that page, or to participate in the back channel on Twitter. Please use the hashtag MAETBridge, all one word. The Bridge is meant to highlight great thinking and leadership on a range of ideas related to education, technologies, and pedagogical practice. We always feature MAET alumni, faculty, and students who, through their research and their experiences and leadership, can enable our viewing audience to consider new perspectives. We also hope that viewers will learn one or two new things from each Bridge webinar that can inform their teaching practice. Today, we are very lucky to be joined by three exemplary arts educators. Dr. Ann Heinz, who is a graduate of the MSU doctoral program in educational psychology and educational technology, is joining us from Arizona. Jason Shula, a graduate of the MAET program and a doctoral candidate at Queen's University, is joining us from Kingston, Ontario. And Blair Winters, also an MAET alum, is a visual arts teacher at L'Anse Creuse Middle School East in Chesterfield, Michigan. And so thank you to each of you for joining us today. We're going to have a great conversation. I would love to start, though, with each of you providing a little background on the work that you do and have done that's connected to our theme of technology integration in arts education programs. Anne, would you like to start?
Sure. I was a theater major in college, and then I got a graduate diploma in theater directing in Australia. From there, I went to work for arts education nonprofit in New York City, and then came and did my PhD in educational technology with specialization in literacy at Michigan State. So while I was at Michigan State, I did research in programs that combined drama and technology, and especially as those can be used to facilitate literacy learning, writing, reading, speaking, listening. So that's what I do.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you, Anne. Jason, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm a middle school, high school drama teacher / English teacher, and my teaching experience stems from overseas. So I spent 3 years teaching in Mexico, 3 years teaching in Istanbul, and 2 years teaching in Abu Dhabi. And I'll be returning to the Middle East in this August to be a middle school drama specialist at the American School of Dubai. And most recently, I've been out of the classroom for 2 years working on my doctorate, but before I left, what I became really interested in was using mobile video devices for improving pedagogical practices and learning within the drama classroom.
Terrific. Thank you, Jason. Blair, how about you?
Well, I'm a fourth-year art teacher, as you said, at L'Anse Creuse Middle School East. I've also taught technology there. I taught a computer graphics class there as well. I did both of my bachelor's degree at MSU. I have a BA in psychology, and then took a little while off and came back for art education because I realized, that was where my passion lied. And then after about a year or so of teaching, I decided to start the MAET program. I was part of the study abroad cohort, so I did the past 2 summers in Ireland. We were in Dublin, Michelle and I, and then it finished up in Galway just last summer.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. Thanks to each of you for joining. So we've got a lot of experience and a lot of talent to draw from. So I'd like to get the conversation started by asking each of you to share your thoughts broadly on how, as arts educators, you think about technology integration in your disciplines. Jason, would you like to start?
Sure, love to start. I think I'll start with where I actually started with after I finished my master's was how do I integrate technology into drama on a daily basis? Because big picture, when you're doing productions and you want technology in the background, you want to have visuals. I mean, it's great when you're doing the after-school musical, and there are really a lot of tangible applications for technology when you're doing the big school productions afterwards. And it's a really neat place to explore. And so what I really was trying to focus on was how do I move that place of exploration after school into my classroom on a daily basis? And so taking into those ideas that come through the MAET program about using technology actually to change the way I teach. So when I started integrating technology into my classroom, it had assessment ramifications, pedagogical ramifications, and really, ramification sounds negative, but really positive, really positive things started to happen. And I would say that my teaching took on a new dimensionality as I tried to integrate and experimented with these ideas of technology. So my place of technology in my arts class, in my drama classroom, really came from a place of experimentation and giving myself a place to experiment, but at the same time recognizing that that experimentation in no way should hamper student learning. So you're trying to balance that. So, and that kind of relates to my first question later on as we get to it. So I think I'll just stop there and leave it at that.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, and what you just said raised lots of other questions, but I'd love to hear what Anne and Blair have to say about how they think about technology integration in the work that they do. Blair, do you want to go next?
Oh, yeah, sure. Being a visual arts teacher and being a visual artist, I really see technology as a way to allow me to be creative in how I teach. So instead of, we're reading through a book, I can maybe, show them an image via ThingLink, and in that image I can embed, different web pages, different articles, different links to different artists, and how it all works together. So I see using technology in my classroom as a way to give my students a broader picture of the art world, both inside of our classroom and outside of our classroom. I also like to use it as a way to connect with my students and motivate my students, and also as a way to really connect with my students' parents as well and my school community. I find technology in my classroom, especially with social media, is a great way for me to advocate for my program as well.
Thank you. And what are your thoughts?
Because a lot of the teaching I do is of writing and literacy, I use drama to teach those things, and then began to explore using technology to help to teach literacy as well. And so technology has so much in common with drama in terms of, just like Jason was saying, experimentation and flexibility, and so the kind of values that dramatic composing embodies, things like visibility, flexibility, those are the same kind of values that technology and composing with technologies has as well. So one small example is a group of students that I was working with. They were writing online, and they discovered that if they wrote in white font on a white page, it was invisible ink. And if they highlighted it, then you could see it, right? Because if you highlight the text, it's like, light on the dark.
Yeah.
And so it was this huge discovery, and because they were all in a lab, they were all working in front of each other. It quickly bounced from one to another. All of a sudden, on this post, this team posted invisible ink too, and other students could read it. And so that sense of composing in front of your peers it's the same as in drama, where you're improvising and you're throwing everything up at the same time, and everybody can see it, and so that technology and the drama make a lot of sense to me because they share a lot of the same values about composing.
So that's really fascinating to me, actually. I never ever made that connection, and ever really thought about that paradigm of composing in front of your peers, right? That visibility piece.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me. Blair, I'm wondering, just jumping off of what Anne has just said, and Jason certainly, please chime in too, but is there the same kind of process of composing in your educational space, in your classroom, that would be analogous to what Anne's talking about? I mean, do you see connections?
Yeah, I do. I mean, as
Visible
far as being
composition?
in a creative art-making environment where, you know, my students are able to bounce ideas off each other's. I do mini, I call them gallery walks, which is no tech. But, you know, when we start a new project, you know, the beginning stages, mini gallery walk, they just walk around, check out each other's stuff, and I encourage them to, you know, have that conversation if they see something they like or something they'd like to learn how to do, to, you know, throw off of and learn from your peers. And just, you know, to throw in the technology piece with that, when, you know, I do things with mobile devices, and I've done things with, what's it called, Padlet, where, you know, I think they can start to get the conversation going, even if it's not about their own artwork, it's about, you know, a professional artist artwork, but, you know, they're in that creative art making environment. So yeah, I do see similarities with that.
Jason, you've described your classroom as a place of exploration and experimentation. And so, building on these thoughts, right, from Anne and Blair, I'm wondering if you can kind of comment on that, and then also talk a little bit about the students' experience. So, who is exploring? Who is creating? What does that feel like in your creative space?
For sure. I'll contextualize it within the larger frame of my research, which is in professional learning, in professional learning. And one of the things I'm really interested in is in the positionality of teacher in professional learning. Because if you look at current conceptions of the technocratic paradigms that constantly focus on student achievement, and you're implementing outside processes to increase student achievement, I started to wonder about, well, what about my achievement? What about me growing as a person as I'm helping students grow as people? Because I think I should be growing in this process too. I think this is just as valuable. My growth as a teacher is just as important. So originally, experimentation was for me. It was a way for me to say, I need to be excited about my own teaching, and not just have kids make teaching exciting. I need to be excited about teaching on a daily basis. And part of the way that I started to explore that was by exploring technology and how I could use it in my class, under the premise that my exploration in no way should impact or negatively impact, because it's going to impact student learning, should negatively impact student learning, making sure that the core values of my curriculum and what I thought were fundamental to my program were still being expressed, but taking personal risks to experiment and explore. And I think one of the most interesting, exciting examples that still resonates with me to date was, we were working, like Anne was talking, I work in collective creation or ensemble work. So that sense of composing is definitely a huge part of my class. And so we were working on a creative piece. I happened to be in Abu Dhabi during the uprisings in Cairo and Egypt, and you know, we were following, and during that time, YouTube and social networking was the best source to get accurate understanding of actually what was going on, because you couldn't trust the local news sources. So we were working on a piece that was talking about refugees and displacement, and looking at the emotional and psychological journeys of people who are displaced from their home communities. And on the day, and we put it all together, it was this kind of 14-minute piece at multiple locations. And the day of, I ran to the library about an hour before and grabbed 5 handheld cameras, and said, okay guys, and brought them to class and didn't tell them anything, and said, okay guys, we're going to do the piece. Here's our final showing, sharing of it. But what I want you to do is record while you're doing it. And they were just like, they didn't know what to do, and then they're like, okay, give them a couple seconds to buy into the idea, and they got really excited about it. And we did it twice, and what I actually saw happening was this incredible understanding of their commitment to the drama, how to make the drama continue, because it's still based in improvisation, so it's loosely scripted. But then there was this whole other level of them starting to use the video cameras to accurately capture the most dramatic moments, so that they were filming the really good stuff. So there was all these levels of awareness happening within the drama, and it was, for me, the most successful exploration and experimentation that I had in drama, and that's what really continued me to explore the use of videotaping from a third person, like whole scenes, and from within the drama. So,
if I can jump in, I have a question based on that. So you said that you went on and you bought those kind of cameras, and you wanted them to record their experience. So my question is, how was your choice influenced, or what made you choose a specific kind of technology, in this case, the camera? What were you thinking that this is the camera for me to choose right now?
Well, our topic was very topical, given what was happening in Cairo at the time, and given that we were consciously, as a school, as looking at social media as ways to communicate information. And so, because we were doing a topic of a very similar thing, and I had friends from Egypt who were talking about personal stories of dislocation, and I thought, you know what, we have our own story of dislocation that can be told in a very powerful way, looking at how powerful the camera was coming out of Cairo. And so it literally it was that connection, that moment, an hour before class, signing out 7 cameras, and then away we go. So that's how it came about.
And then, I mean, just thinking about like the visibility piece, right, that we were talking about before. So there's been this composition, and then there's visibility. And then, Jason, did you upload that to a social network? And then what happened? And what influence then did that have?
We so I edited. I put it together. So I was responsible for doing the editing, and then put soundtrack to it and captions and did all that kind of stuff. And then I have not uploaded it to social networks, because I only upload it if there's consensus from everyone in the group that they want it to be shared.
Absolutely.
Because of the nature of the work and the visibility of the work, and given the position of the students within the school, and there's potential family connections, and so there's other issues that are raised when you're teaching overseas, and potentially have high-profile kids in your class. So we shared it within the school, and I gave the students copies to share at their will. So that's how we made the product visible.
Thank you. And I've got a question for you. I would love, based on your background and your experiences working in an arts program in New York City, I would love for you to share any sort of examples of performing arts and technologies programs that you feel really exemplify some of the ideas that have already been shared, or other sort of markers of quality that you would really identify as an arts educator.
Sure. I put a link on the resources page, and that should be available for one organization called Global Rights.
Okay.
And they do slam poetry, and they do, just as Jason was talking about, videotape performances, which are then shared with students in schools across the country or even across the globe. And the process of videotaping helps the students to look at their work and see, so it becomes a source of information to them about how they can improve, as well as it is possible for them to share with others. And Global Rights is an example of a nonprofit, and I want to talk about 3 kind of areas for arts technology integration. So one is nonprofits, and these are usually started by visionaries, people who have an idea about how drama and technology, or technology and other things, can be combined. And so the curriculum is often really outstanding, and it's the sort of thing where you can bring them into your school or into your classroom as part of a residency program. Another example of this is WebPlay, the organization that I worked with for my dissertation, and in this case, students pretended to be special investigators, and they had weekly video messages from the head of the investigative unit, and So it was a role play unit, and it involved creating a guidebook to your local area, as well as math skills and literacy skills. And so this particular organization folded, as many perhaps do in certain, climates where there isn't extra funding for the arts. But their curriculum is, still accessible. So that's one kind of area where some of the really interesting work is being done, is the nonprofits. But another area is the councils. So just about every state has an arts council. Many states have a humanities council. So if you are a classroom teacher who is exploring ways to integrate technology, check out your local arts council and your local humanities council, because not only do they make curriculum available, but they also make funding available. So if you need to buy those 6 cameras in order for your students to videotape themselves, they just might have the budget for you to do that. A third area that, if you're wanting to find out more, libraries and museums. Libraries, museums, other cultural institutions often have education wings or outreach divisions, and they also come into the school and often have a charter of teaching the teachers. So not only do they come in and do an arts and technology program for students, part of their charter is also to transmit that knowledge to the teacher as well. And their job isn't done until the classroom teacher feels like they could just do it by themselves the following semester. So those are 3 different areas where you can find really good things happening.
Those are terrific recommendations. Blair, would you have a similar list of kind of thoughts in terms of visual arts? I mean, are there organizations or programs that you know of where you see technologies and arts happening sort of maybe in the community outside of school?
Well, the DIA does a lot, not so much with integrating of the technology, but they have a great Inside Out project where they have art, they take the museum and they bring it out, and it's in different parks all around Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne County. And the cool thing with that is they have like a Twitter aspect to it, so you tweet the picture, and then I believe the hashtag is DIA Inside Out. And so
just to interrupt, DIA is the Detroit Institute of Arts, right?
Yes, yeah, it's the Detroit Institute of Arts. Which, by the way, if you live in Oakland, Macomb, or Wayne County, you can go for free because they passed the millage. So that's just the one that comes to the top of my mind right now. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as me finding things to do and integrating technology into my classroom, I mean, I go to Twitter all the time to find, other bloggers, other art educators, and get ideas from them for how I do it. I don't know. Now I'm thinking about it, maybe there's a need for that.
No, that's really interesting. Yeah. Well, okay, so social media. You bring that up as a source of information for you as a professional. Mm-hmm. Jason, Anne, I mean, have you found this also to be a useful place for, enrichment of yourself as a professional? I mean, Jason, you were talking about that very idea earlier. In what ways, if at all, do you use those social network platforms? Are we having trouble with Jason's?
I'm back.
Hi.
I just shut down on me. I wasn't touching the computer at all.
It happens. Oh, technology. So, did you hear the question, Jason?
No, I did not.
Okay. So, well, the question was, I mean, Blair talked about her use of social media and social networks as a source of professional learning. And I just wondered how, if at all, you use social media in this way as an arts educator and researcher even as well. And I mean, the question's for you and for Anne as well, just to sort of comment and chime in.
It's honestly, for me, it's an area that I have not explored yet in terms of I have my bank of resources and like web pages right now that I really attune to. Speaking of which, the National Theatre in London, the British National Theatre, has incredible arts resources. There's a great program there where the vocal coach does a whole series of voice warm-ups. You can actually get the vocal coach from the National Theatre and brought in your classroom, and she does your vocal warm-up for you. It's amazing. So In terms of social media, it's new. I'm working on building my web presence and getting connected, and that's part of my personal mandate, is to start having those sources of information coming into my professional learning as professional learning resources.
I also have my favorite websites, like Folger Shakespeare Library has incredible online resources for drama educators. And as far as social media, I use YouTube a lot, because if I need a quick lesson on iambic pentameter, if I need students or teachers demonstrating something in a short and kind of pithy way, then it's on YouTube. So I think that as arts educators who use technology, sharing on YouTube is so valuable, because I know so many teachers who go to YouTube, 10 minutes before class, like I do.
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously it's a terrific resource. Okay, we've already covered so much ground. I really do want to turn to sort of some specific ideas around technology integration in each of your contexts. But before we do that, Anne and Jason both, and Blair too, I would love to really ground that conversation about, tips or tricks or strategies for technology integrations in your classroom in what you understand about good technology integration in arts programs from the research base. So, Anne, I guess I'm going to start with you. What research do you sort of reference as a foundation for your own technology integration practice?
I use a lot of the research on audience, because audience is a skill that's necessary for writing, but is one that's often hard to teach. Okay. And there's a lot of research out there that shows that using social platforms like blogs, wikis, and as well as using drama, like Jason was saying, collective creation, both of those teach the concept of audience in very compelling ways, arguably in ways that you can't really do without either of those things. The research also shows for writing in terms of technologies employ a communication element that may also be absent in other writing, conditions. So we talked a little bit about the visibility, and communication as a part of the writing process is facilitated by technologies in a way that is also hard to do offline, but in a way that has proven to be very compelling for reluctant and struggling writers. They may find it, you can have a lot of trouble motivating students to sit down and write by themselves. If they are able to start brainstorming or free writing on a shared platform, all of a sudden what they're writing feels more like communication, and so comes with it all of those things about wanting to impress the other kids and wanting to tell good stories and wanting to be funny. And so they start writing, trying to do all those social things, and then before you know it, they have a whole corpus of stuff that they can turn into whatever they need to turn into the teacher. So those ways that technology can facilitate some of those thornier issues in writing are some of the research that I really draw on. And I would suggest, if you're looking for researchers, Brian Edmiston and his group are one of the best kind of minds you can read in terms of thinking about theater writing and the place of technology in the.
That's terrific. Brian Edmiston, can you spell that?
Yeah, Edmiston.
Awesome. We'll tweet that out. Thank you so much, Anne. That's terrific. Any other research, Blair, Jason, that you use to kind of guide your own technology integration practices?
Absolutely. As a theater teacher, the best research that I can do is actually go to theater. And so that is my fundamental source of research, and I do view it as research. In terms of how technology integrates into that research, what I'm really interested in is, as a theater practitioner too, is the lived experience or the embodied experience. So as an audience member, I'm really interested in those moments that impact me in the body, and so how my body suddenly responds to what's happening on stage, and then kind of unpacking those experiences and wondering what were the component parts that brought about that moment that hit me. And inevitably now, in the way that theater is, technology is a part of that, is a huge part of that experience. And so then what I try and do on my minimalist scale is reproduce those impacts, is try and create those moments of impact in my own work, whether it be in the classroom or whether it be in the after school show, and then helping kids understand that our responsibility is to create that impact. And so when we integrate, and when we do that through the integration of technology, not by solely relying on technology, so it's this human technological relationship that has to be there for that impact to happen, because I don't believe it can happen. It can happen solely with a person, and I guess it can happen solely with technology. But when you combine them, you get a new experience. Not even something that's a composite of both. I think it actually is a generative and new experience that is codependent upon that relationship.
Love it. Blair?
I just always, I remember my TPAC, and the technology has got to fit what's happening. It shouldn't, what if I'm trying to teach a lesson about, clay? Maybe sometimes technology is not going to be the right tool for me that day. I mean, just with the math and everything. But if I'm, showing them, artwork of Picasso, it's important for them to see that, and them to be able to, look at his images, and then be able to, start to develop their own questions and their own thinking about his artwork. Just kind of to go off of what you said, Jason, I do think it's really important that I, as their teacher, get out there and I go to the museums. I was just in Las Vegas, and the Bellagio has a beautiful art gallery there, and so I went and checked it out, and I took a lot of pictures while I was in there, and I have a class Instagram, so I was sending those out to my students and getting the conversation going on in that way, even though we're not even in school this week. So yeah, I mean, the technology has really got to fit, and sometimes in a visual art class it doesn't. So
And the drama class.
Right, but I think it's just a really fundamental point that you've all really made, that the learning objectives have to drive the technology integration, no matter what, right? I mean, it really has to start with that, and then to the extent that the technology can support your objectives or create a new experience that wouldn't otherwise be possible, as you were saying, Jason.
Yeah. Or even dimensionality. I like the concept of dimensionality, adding richness, layers, and depth to it. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, me too. And then the idea of audience, right? Like, I mean, and just the range of audiences that one can consider. Yeah, that's really pivotal. Jason, I've got a question for you. You've said that something about technology as being an artistic hinge, and I wonder if we've already kind of addressed that sort of in some of the things that you've talked about, but this is a question that I wanted to ask you. What does that mean? To approach technology in that way?
Sure. I love metaphors. I think all drama teachers do. I think we speak in them because we're trying to encapsulate,
we think in them, right? We do.
We think in them, and we're trying to get kids to do things, and so we have to. It's like this. It's like that, or it's always a part of our language, because actually, what we're trying to get at, you can't necessarily pinpoint, but it's a culmination of all these things, and so. It comes back, so I use the hinge in correlation with the door, and to think about opening, right? Constantly opening. So recognizing that moment in your class where you're implementing technology is a hinge. It's an opening, it's a space of opening. So you are going to, by implementing that technology in your class, you're going to open up your class, your teaching, your student experience to a whole new range of possibilities. And so when you open that door, you also have to be prepared for the ramifications of opening that door, positive and negative. Great idea, didn't work. Great idea, it worked wonderfully. Like that kind of idea, and it leads you into a beautiful reflective cycle that says, why didn't it work, or why did it work so well? Both are really important reasons to reflect. Not just because it worked well doesn't mean you just never pay attention to it again and just implement it. It's important to dig into those experiences.
Or it worked. It just took me 7 days longer than I needed it to.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Or 7 years, because I felt that there was something really important there, and I just kept working through it every year when I got to that point. And you finally figure out what the kernel is. What is at the core of the metaphor. Like what it is that thing that you're trying to figure out. So that it's an important metaphor that I think aligns nicely with my idea of exploration, experimentation, right? Constantly opening doors and recognizing those, and the hinge just gives you something to pinpoint and a timeline so that you can go back to it as a reference point and then look at it and go, how did this impact things that came after this point? So that's how I like to construe the hinge or the door.
Oh, I like that. You kind of bring up a good point, and this idea of risk and and being willing to try new things and then to look at it and to step back. And what I'm finding in my classroom and in my school that when it comes to using technology, there's a lot of teachers who are not willing to take that risk, and they kind of push against it, or they don't want to try something new. They don't want to learn something. They don't want to, I don't know, I guess maybe they're set in their ways, but I'm finding myself as somebody who's like that, who wants to take risks and try new things, and I want others to try them too. I'm kind of getting this resistance right now, and some of the teachers in my school think I'm like crazy because I let my students use their cell phones. So I think you kind of bring this point of you have to be able to take risks as a 21st century educator. You have to be able to do these things and to try these new technologies. So I really like the way you put that.
Well, and Blair, I think you hit on a point that I really did want to ask you all about. It's the tensions, right? So when we think about composition, creation, the construction of sort of artistic meaning or meaning through art, I imagine that there are these very unique kind of disciplinary tensions that you feel when you're considering a technology for use with your students. And I wonder if anybody can talk to that point about those tensions that you feel or that you see, or that maybe your colleagues are talking to you about. It could be the risk factor, but I imagine that there are these other tensions too that are related to the learning itself or the way things have been done. Any thoughts from anyone?
Well, I kind of feel like when, for example, with drawing, right?
Yep.
When students draw, if I just say, hey, draw a cat, they're going to go off what their schema is, right? In their head of what a cat looks like: a circle, triangle ears, triangle nose, little whiskers. But, if I allow them to take out, their phone and look up an image of a cat, it's going to turn out very differently. So it's a way, I'm seeing it kind of like in that situation, there's not necessarily that tension, right? Although if I say, get out your phones and research, why the DIA is possibly looking at selling their artwork, to pay off Detroit's debts, there's that that risk that they're going to get off task, or they're going to be looking at something they shouldn't. And so, does that answer your question? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
No, I don't really know that there's a right or wrong in this question, but it does, right? So there's the tension, right, of like maybe teachers kind of worry that kids are going to get off task and that their class time won't be used as efficiently or as effectively as possible.
Right.
But by your assessment, Blair, it sounds like the benefit, right, of using that technology for the kind of work your students can produce as a result of having engaged with another image of a cat far outweighs the risk or that tension that you might feel as a teacher.
Right, for me. And I think making my expectations very clear with what I expect for how you're going to use this tool is so important. Like, my kids know that if they're using any sort of tool, like for example clay, there's my clay contract. This is how you use clay. This is how you don't use clay. These are the consequences for not using clay responsibly. Sign here. This is a contract. You're held to it. So I do the same thing with technology in my classroom, and they know I follow through. They take it very seriously, and I call it a circle of trust. So they want to stay in the circle. And so I am not, knock on wood, seeing those risks or those tensions as of right now. For me, yes, the benefits are definitely outweighing the risk at this point. And I'm liking that I can be creative in how I teach when I use technology, and that I can, allow it to use them to expand their creativity and expand their ideas. And I'd rather do that than be afraid that, they're be on a website they shouldn't be, or they're going to snap a picture of their friend, or
Sure.
For me, that's what works.
Angie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think a tension that comes up certainly in dramatic composing is that there's nothing quite like creating with a team or a group or a cast. And so if you use technology to try to replace or replicate that experience, then it seems to me that for me, that would be where I would stop and say, okay, why?
Uh-huh.
Right. I'm thinking about a very simple drama game called What Is It, where you take any household object like a basket and you pass it around the circle and you say, what is it? And in the hands of one kid, it becomes a steering wheel. In the hands of another, it becomes a frisbee. In the hands of another, and it gets more and more elaborate. It's a pizza pie. And so games like that where the classic Aristotle's, the reason we do art is recognition. Oh, that's how I see something too.
Mm-hmm.
I think technology, for me anyway, is a great tool for capturing that moment, for researching what you need in order for that moment. So I can see where there would be a tension for drama educators, especially in trying to go too far.
No, I would totally agree with that. I think there are two tensions that exist and there are personal tensions that exist. Well, one personal, one external. Pedagogically, I think the body, the voice, and the imagination are the most amazing things. And my responsibility is, and I fully believe this, is to help kids understand that they can do more than sit, stand, and lie down. Mm-hmm. And that they have this range of function that is not very often accessed. So, when I think about technology, I feel like there's a tension there because it's pulling them back to this thing that what I do is
right.
sit, or what I do is like, this is the most activity I'm going, as I go through this, when your body is an incredible tool and so powerful in expressing so many different ideas. And so that's one of the tensions that I have as a drama teacher in terms of making choices about how personally and pedagogically how I bring technology into the classroom. The second one is YouTube is an incredible resource, but it's problematic because you get into issues of mimicry. Kids are doing something and then they go to YouTube, and then what they do is they bring that essence of that performance into your classroom, and I'm like, you haven't discovered you in this exercise. What you're bringing in is mimesis. It's mimetic, and it's not grounded. It has no substance, and it hasn't informed you, or you haven't informed it in any way. So it can be very detrimental to that process of finding authentic expression, which is something that I really try and help kids understand, and how powerful it is, and how liberating and exciting it is to find those places and moments of authentic expression.
Thank you. That really helps me as someone who doesn't actually teach drama. I've never taken a drama class or ever really involved myself in any way in dramatic arts, except to be a consumer, right, of dramatic performance in lots of different places, to really understand the complexities, right, of those interactions for students who are maybe like me, right, consuming dramatic performance. But then how do you get kids to find themselves in their performance and in their art.
Good question.
That's a really, really good point.
That's a really good point. I see that too in my classroom. If, like, for example, if I make a project example, I show them what it looks like, and there are those kids that want to copy it exactly.
Yeah.
So I show them it, hide it.
Yeah.
And if you're looking, like, for example, we did Picasso face faces. I want you to look at his work and be inspired by his work. I do not want you to copy his work, right? So let's take those things like those thick, broad strokes, the shifted perspectives, but don't copy exactly. Take it and put your own spin on it. And I've seen good things with that, and I've seen replicas. So there's that tension as well. That's a very good point, Jason.
And so it makes you really prize the time that you have with the students in your classroom, because you understand that they can be looking at examples on their own time all they want, but it's a lot harder for them to have a teacher who's skilled in facilitating, like you were saying, Michelle, that production from themselves. So I think that's a really good example of hybrid learning, and how, yes, there might be a great place for technology and arts education, but it might be that place is a place where you ask students to do things at home. And so I think, we had some really awesome examples of hybrid arts classes that have come through CEPA 20, the course at MSU where students design an online course module. And what some of those educators found, I'm thinking of a music educator, was that she could put a lot of material online, videos, examples. She could put sound clips. She could, put 3 different recordings of a particular jazz standard, so that students got the idea that jazz is different from, every single person who plays a particular song, though the notes are the same. It sounds differently. But she didn't have to have them necessarily listen to all 3 of those in class. She could say, listen to these at home, come into class, let's talk about why this one appealed to you, what's the tone behind this, what's the feeling that comes through this one. So she made a lot of the work that technology could do for her student, on their own time work.
So I think we're talking about flipping here to a certain extent as well, right? About moving some of that learning and having that learning start as the discussion point when they come into class. Yeah.
We have a question on Twitter on the same topic. Our incoming student Brian J. Arnold is asking that we learn through imitation. So, do most kids have the experience or skill to generate authentically personal narratives? What do you guys think?
Good question.
I'm going to say absolutely.
Okay.
I think they're born with it. They have life experience. They have senses. They have seen things. They felt things. They've touched things. They've encountered the world. They smelled things. And those are all of those banks of resources that they can draw upon when they generate. Not to say that great artists don't steal. If you want to go back to Picasso, there was also Braque, right? And really, if you look at the Braque-Picasso debate there, who started Cubism and who got all the credit, there's lots there, right? So, and I go to YouTube and steal stuff as well, but it's about understanding, borrow stuff as well.
And it's
but I think we have a mature understanding as how to use and implement those ideas, as opposed to engaging in strict mimesis. Like, we get inspired by those ideas and then can move beyond them, whereas students, I think, can get stopped or halted at a very early part. And so when we acknowledge or start with just that, and then use something that resembles it maybe later on in the process, then that can become a really powerful learning moment. But I think from a dramatic perspective, it's all in the body. It's all there, and we just need to pull it out.
I mean, think about any playground, the school playground, and a kid trips, and then immediately 2 other kids act out that kid tripping. And so kids are constantly acting out what they see around them all the time. But you stick them in a drama classroom and you give them a script, and it's like, I don't do that. I'm not an actor, you know.
Yeah.
And so as far as do we have the skill, we we do it all the time. We always have the impulse to retell what we just saw or our life experience, but drama teachers need to help everyone realize that it's not so precious.
I just think about, how I teach. So I show them how to make something. Let's say a coil pot with clay. I show it, they imitate what I just did. But, it's up to them to take it to the next level. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's our job as teachers to kind of like guide them and say, yeah, I taught you the technique, but it's up to you to, decide what the final work is going to look like. Okay? And it's crazy how I will always give kids the same requirements, yet they will still come out completely different. So, I believe that, they can, do these things on their own, but it does maybe start with a little bit of imitation.
Well, and going back to the idea, Anne, that you were talking about, the example that you shared from the student who really sort of curated, right, a set of exemplars, say, 3 versions of the same jazz standard. Mm-hmm. Students ostensibly, right, could then have access to a range of examples, right, not just a single sort of perspective or a single version. And sort of in doing that, right, I mean, would you not then be sort of, either implicitly or explicitly, right, promoting this idea of creation as sort of something unique, right, that we bring ourselves into this, and that the technology might actually facilitate in some ways the recognition on the student's part, right, that there could be a range of variations or, versions of this thing. So, seeing several different versions of a clay pot, let's say, Blair, or, it's a coil pot, but, you could pull it, or you could build it out this way, or you could make them thicker or thinner, right? And so seeing sort of that variation would then, sensibly enable students to build maybe their own conceptions a little bit more quickly. What do you think?
Yes, and not just range across styles, but also within styles. So if you're able to see an artist go through draft after draft after draft, revision after revision after revision, I'm thinking of something like even American Idol. I mean, I don't know if they, show different moments in practice, but when you have video, when you introduce students to an artist's process, even outtakes on DVDs, they're able to see that sometimes it stinks, and you take the 3% that doesn't stink, and you use that the next time, and then the next time it only stinks 24%, and you take that part that works, and you do that again next time. So, yeah, absolutely.
Going back to the question about imitating, there's a sense that like when you're learning to draw and you study the great masters, and there's or something like that. It's the sense of, I always feel that if you look at the history of, I think, of really great artists who have impacted the world, they have a super, super strong sense of what has come before, and that allows them to take steps into places where they don't know where they're going. So I think you're right. Like imitating the kid tripping in the playground. There is mimesis that is mimetic events that are built into that history, but to operationalize them as giving you the strength to move forward, I think is another step. So I think that's where with younger people you run into potential problems. So to say that there is no sense of imitation or we learn by imitation in the arts I think is a bit of a fallacy, and I don't think we want to paint that idea here, because I don't think we're actually all saying that. But there's a sense of history and moving forward from that sense of history that is part of the artistic process.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's in the similarity, right? I mean, this is all kind of connecting, right? Our thoughts about audience and connections, but I mean, for an audience of visual art or of dramatic art to really connect, right, there has to be an element of similarity between my experience and your experience, right, and your portrayal of that experience and the uniqueness that you build into it, right, is what you bring to my understanding of that experience. But right, there has to be that similarity.
That makes the connection.
That makes the connection real and authentic and grounded. Yeah, exactly.
And pedagogically, I don't see any problem with a student copying. I really don't. as part of the composing process. I mean, is that part of visual art pedagogy, that you practice painting in the style of a
Right,
particular
yeah,
artist?
yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah, you could start, learning this artist style and you practice like that. When I teach drawing, I start from like very basic, and we have warm-ups where we're literally drawing the little box, what's in the little box above and the little box below, and it's just a building block, it's a step, and then, we evolve and we keep going and we build, and eventually at the end of it, it's their own, but they're using the technique. So it's more imitation of the technique as part of the process to get to the final product, which hopefully is unique to that art.
That's a really nice
artist.
distinction there, is that distinction between the product and the technique that brought about the product.
Yeah.
I think is really important there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I might be wrong, but there's this fine line between being inspired or imitating. Like, because of the internet, remixing and remaking, people often call that or use inspiration for remaking. But I think there's a difference between the two, which should be clear. For instance, what she's talking right now, that they take that tool and copy it. How does a child learn to write? They start writing, they start imitating, and then it turns into inspiration, and then it can evolve into different patterns of handwriting, right?
Right.
Yep, absolutely. I'm just looking at our time. We've only got 5 minutes, and I've got about like 17 other questions that I really want to ask all of you, because I'm just so interested in your perspectives and thoughts. I guess this conversation really does sort of lead very logically to a conversation around assessment and evaluation using technologies in your disciplines. And I just am imagining, teachers who might be wondering, okay, so how do I use technologies to assess or evaluate the work that my students do in authentic ways? If you can just sort of give like one quick example, that would be awesome.
I use Socrative, Socrative.com. I like it because I can embed images in there, and then students can identify the artist or identify the style. So that's one way that I use.
Thanks, Blair.
Yeah.
Anne, what do you think? Assessment.
Sure. If you're teaching writing and they're writing online, then you have a stable, enduring location where you and students can easily reference the work that has been done. So it's a portfolio. It's enduring, and you can comment, you can cut, you can paste, you can copy. So, yeah.
Jason?
I also taught a public speaking class, and it's impossible to assess 25 speeches in a class and no one wants to watch 25 speeches either. So SlideShare was really important. Slide casting was huge for that in terms of capturing that, and then a video as well was really important, because then they would go off in groups and do it, and then I could watch it at my own leisure, and I wasn't taking up huge amounts of class time, and they could keep doing it until they felt it captured what they wanted to present. So it wasn't a one-shot deal. So in many ways it was actually much better, because it allowed them to keep going back and getting it until they thought they got it right. So
Thank you. Okay, 2 more quick questions. Lightning rounds. Okay. Tips for teachers Monday morning. Something that they could do to build in technology in a thoughtful way into their classroom. What do you think?
For me, I had a homeroom, so there was a homeroom policy, and so for me, I used technology to show that I was up with pop culture. So that was my way to bring in the trending YouTube video and have a discussion about it and do all of that kind of stuff. So Monday morning in homeroom, when no one really is awake, a YouTube video and discussion on pop culture and why this is important or why this is trending on YouTube was a great way to start the week at easy access point.
Love it. Claire?
Geez, let me think. I'm really liking ThingLink. I don't know if you guys have heard of this
You
one.
mentioned that before, ThingLink.
Cool. You can you start with an image, so it can be your image, it can be an image from the internet, whatever, and then you can embed YouTube videos, you can embed wiki links, you can embed pretty much anything you want, and it puts it on like as little icons on the image. So it's kind of like you start with an image as the focus of your conversation. So you could use like Dorothea Lange's images if you were talking about the Great Depression. And then the kids can kind of use it as a way to teach themselves. So you kind of draw them in with like a striking image, if you will, that you feel encompasses what you want them to learn, and then they can kind of go off on their own and teach themselves.
Love it. Anne, have you got a tip?
You have a performer that mumbles, that doesn't articulate his words, and that doesn't have great volume. Open up your laptop, start recording him, upload it, make him go home, watch it, make him come in, and he can really see and hear what he sounds like. So at least he gets a baseline of what everyone else is experiencing.
No,
Love it. Love it. Last question is the question we always ask of everyone who comes onto the bridge as an invited guest. What makes you happy about the work you do? Jason, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. There are lots of things that make me happy, and I think the moment that makes me the happiest, or when I feel the most joy, is when, as a teacher, I just get to sit and watch and appreciate the uniqueness of the students in my classroom. And that's just, and I feel like as a drama teacher, I get that job every day, and that's why I think teaching drama is the best job in the school. I'm just going to put that there.
Anne, what do you think?
Yeah, you know, I mean, if the children are laughing, you're doing something right. So, well, not always, but often. Not always.
What makes you happy?
That makes me happy. That makes me
That
happy.
makes you happy.
When they come in to your classroom and it's like, I'm 16 and life is terrible, and then they leave your classroom and they've made something. They've used what was inside of them to make something. It's amazing. Yeah.
I think that's part of my job is seeing my students like grow into young artists, and not only that, grow into young people and young positive people. I love it when they come in thinking, like, kind of similar to you said, they can't do something, and then they leave and they're like, whoa, that turned out way better than I thought. And that makes me happy. That makes me feel like I did my job. And I also love it when I see them, something I taught them to do, and they're teaching somebody else. That makes me really happy too. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you so much to each of you, to Jason Shula, Blair Winters, Dr. Ann Heinz. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such a fun conversation. I feel like I learned a ton.
You.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was so much fun. It was so much fun.
I feel like you've been copying Audie Cornish. You're really good at facilitating.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of people.
Wow. Thank you. If only. If only. Thank you so much.
You can be right off the Actors Studio. I don't know if you've seen that.
Well, Pootie suggested I needed to get 2 ferns, so.
That would be funny.
Anyway, thank you so much. This has been absolutely terrific.
Everyone,
just a last little plug to people who are watching, we will be doing this again in about a month, May 16th, around the lunch hour. Watch for the tweets. We'll be focusing on language learning and technology that day. Dr. Chinchi Lin will be joining us. Spencer Greenhall will be hosting because I will be on a trip to France with my husband's World War I seminar.
Oh,
so
awesome.
Arun will be joining. Yeah, exactly. But Spencer will be absolutely terrific. So that's it. The next one will be May the 16th. Thank you so much to each of you for joining us, and enjoy your weekend.
You as well, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.